This week on Behind the Pulpit, we are going to dive into Revelation chapter 2 and 3. We have a chart sighting, and my goodness, we have a plethora of news stories. We're glad you're here with us today. Make sure if you have not liked our YouTube channel, right? Is that liking? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, even before you've seen it. Like and subscribe, and you will not regret it. I'm here with my world-famous co-pastor, Pastor Dave. Dave, look at you, rocking the NBC shirt over there.
Hey guys,
how's it going
do you like
today?
it when Bob points at you like that? Is that okay? Does that feel
recognizing the audience.
confrontational,
We see you.
or
We
is that
see
like
you.
does that feel affirming? I don't know.
Bringing it to the streets right now, Pastor Dave.
That's our job. I think it's a song, right? Taking it to the streets.
How was your weekend? It was a pretty dreary weekend this weekend.
It was. I think we're having the residual effects of that Hurricane Helene up here in the Northeast, and it's been raining.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We certainly needed the rain, although I think we're about to get some sunny times.
It was,
coming
yeah.
in.
I saw somebody at lunch yesterday that was asking me about Pastor Chad Boudreau. Do you remember him? He lives down in Louisiana.
Oh, how could I? To know him is to never forget him.
It is
Bob.
true. It is true. The essence of Chad. I don't think.
Are we
going to
maybe see Chad? Is there a New Jersey flight being planned?
He was going to come for the conference, the Contend conference.
He did. This is an affirmative.
But Chad, I got to follow
there's
up.
a but.
I got to follow up with him and make sure he remembered the dates and all that.
Is it going to Chad? We're talking to you.
Yeah, sometimes he watches.
We need the confirmation, bro. We need to see that.
I didn't send a calendar invite yet, so I need to do that maybe today and see if he accepts or declines.
Him and his essence.
What's the essence, Tim? I don't get it.
Well, you said the essence of Pastor Chad, so he needs to bring
like
himself
an
and
essence.
his
It's like
essence.
the homoousia, the Trinity.
We're bordering on heresy. Only 2 minutes into the show, folks.
Stay tuned. All right. Well, it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend here at church. Pastor Dave was preaching the word, and we're looking forward to diving into that. How did you feel about your sermon this weekend? The 7 workbooks were flying off the shelves. We had none left. That was a surprise.
It's a humbling experience to try to cover what is 7 separate homiletical sections in one sermon for me. I don't typically like to go that fast, but because we had done this, I think 5 years ago, in the fall of 2019.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
The 7 series was...
Pre-pandemic?
The work was already done in terms of the spade work, and so... It was just a matter of how do I make this into one sermon and choose like one highlight from each church rather than do a deep dive.
Yeah.
So that was the helicopter ride yesterday, but 5 years ago, hard to believe that was 5 years ago, Pastor Bob.
It was that long ago.
Man, 5 years ago, we did a guided walking tour. So folks who want the tour can check out those videos on our YouTube channel.
And this week, we're sending out those sermons one by one each day, right? So I've already gotten 2.
That's right. We're on day 2 already. So that's our challenge, to make that part of your devotional time, 1 church per day. And let's go through the 7 churches of Revelation this week.
I think today was Smyrna. That was one Johnny did. Johnny actually got and was like bench pressing on stage for Smyrna.
Yeah, if you need to see a little Johnny messing around with some weights, that's your sermon. It's a good one.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's today.
I remember the catchphrase with that was lightweight. Johnny was like, this is lightweight. This is lightweight. So he's probably our most fit staff member. Not trying to take anything away from you, Pastor Bob, but Johnny doesn't miss a day in the gym.
He's got that genetic lean build over there. So, all right. So that's the opening. How about we move on to our in the news segment? Tim, very famous, world famous. All right, let's do the news roundup today. We couldn't decide on one story, so we have a multitude of stories. So I think we're going to ping pong back and forth, and I'm going to start. So the story I want to follow up on, which I am watching with great intrigue, and I mentioned it last week, is this dock worker strike that could be happening tomorrow. So the Associated Press says a dock worker strike could shut down the East and Gulf ports. Will it affect holiday shopping? So if you are planning to order stuff, if you're going to get out in the store, this could ruin Christmas. Is what they're saying right here. So here's the issue: 45,000 dock workers, as part of the Longshoremen International Longshoremen's Association Union are currently trying to get higher wages, and they want a ban on the automation of cranes and gates and container-moving trucks. They don't want AI taking their jobs, Pastor Dave, along 36 U.S. ports, which includes New York and New Jersey, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. So you might know somebody who's impacted by this. So later on here in the article, it says, how will it affect consumers? The strike could last weeks or months. Months, Pastor Dave. The ports might be shut down, and you probably won't notice shortages in retail goods, but a strike that persists for more than a month would likely cause a shortage of some consumer products. All those holiday retail goods have arrived. They may have already arrived, but it could be. I was hearing it could affect bananas. I'm a little concerned we're not going to be getting our bananas in the next couple months, Pastor Dave. So it's a little concerning.
That story is bananas.
It is bananas. So listen, they're trying to reach a deal by tomorrow. If they don't reach a deal by tomorrow, it's on, and we should be praying for the supply chains and all that.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So New York, New Jersey in the news nationally, maybe globally. So watch for that. Certainly we want to understand our economy, and we want to understand our place in the economy. And from a Christian worldview perspective, how can we interpret that kind of story? What would we have to say about the anxiety that perhaps a story like that would produce?
Well, I think a couple angles. One would be it could be anxiety producing, but no matter what happens, as you taught us about yesterday, we trust that Jesus is on the throne, that there will be suffering that comes. I think at the same time we're looking for justice and not for people to be taken advantage of. I think there's also an element of work is good, and so we want people to do meaningful work. So I think all those things dovetail into that current story.
All the way on the other side of the world, speaking of supply chain issues, and there's actually another situation in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and the organization over there that's trying to cut off some travel. There's a big big supply chain issue happening on the other side of the globe. And news around the whole Middle East conflict came across my news feed on Friday about the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed in an Israeli strike. That's been confirmed. And so Israel said that he was killed in airstrikes in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. And really, this particular organization, Hezbollah, has become part of the war with Israel and Gaza. I think the very next day after the attack of October 7th, Hezbollah decided to also wage open war against Israel as well. And this particular leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, has been responsible for thousands of deaths of Israelis, Americans, and others. He's, of course, a terrorist. Unfortunately, there was some civilians killed in this strike, which is, of course, terrible and sad. It is also the nature of warfare in the war on terror, because oftentimes the leaders will hide amongst civilians for that reason in order to provide themselves protection. And so there becomes kind of an ethical catch-22 involved. President Biden last night came out with a pretty strong statement regarding this issue and stood firmly with Israel and said that there was some justice that occurred. So Israel in the news, they are obviously being attacked on all sides, and it's something that we need to pray for, and certainly we hope to see the end of this war to come soon in our time. So big story in the news.
That's a big story.
Yeah.
Perhaps another story, maybe we should have led with this one, was Hurricane Helen, or Helene, however you say it, rammed through Florida and Georgia and North Carolina, and I was seeing pictures from Asheville, North Carolina, on the western side of the state, which you wouldn't think would be affected by hurricanes, but there was a lot of rain, flooding. World News Group, which is a Christian magazine, their headquarters were impacted by that. A number of people lost their life, and so that's currently happening, or just happened. And so we should remember that people are very much being impacted by that. Which, by the way, your daughter's down in Atlanta. Did she get hit by this hurricane?
Yeah, I mean, it came right through Atlanta, and they lost power for quite some time. She didn't experience any major wind damage or anything where she is, so we thank the Lord that she's safe, as well as her husband, Tim. What's up, Alex and Tim, if you happen to be watching? But if you're looking for
regular viewers of Behind the Pulpit?
I don't know. We'll find out. If you're looking for a way to sort of give in the sense of Christian compassion right now, I know Samaritan's Purse is on the ground there in western North Carolina, starting what's called a 5-site response to Hurricane Helene. And so check that out. That's a way to give in terms of disaster relief in Jesus' name. But we certainly need to pray for our brothers and sisters in Boone, North Carolina, and the surrounding cities.
Yeah, so that was a challenging thing that happened, and I think that's a good word to be aware of. So be praying at the very least for people that were affected by the hurricane. You know, Pastor Dave, I remember back in the day when Hurricane Sandy came up through here, and that was not something that was a common occurrence in New Jersey, and that was rather disconcerting when it happened.
A storm surge of our own back in 2012. That was 12 years ago. This whole area was out of power because of a lot of wind damage. There's a lot of big trees in our area, and I think I was out of power for like a week. How about you?
I don't remember if it was a week, but it was certainly a few days.
Yeah.
It was a bit crazy. I never had experienced anything quite like that.
Right. Yeah. So it can be devastating. Natural disasters certainly remind us of how small we are and how out of control we are. Though we may want to seize control of this world through our study of science, ultimately it's a humbling experience to realize how vulnerable we are and how dependent on our God we are and how fragile life is. And so let's remember to turn towards the Lord in these times.
Very much so. Very cool. Thus ends the In the News segment. Be up to date and stay tuned, friends.
That was like a very Lord of the Rings kind of ending there. And thus ends this morning's edition of In the News.
Maybe we should have different rings for each of these segments, Tim, if we're going to do the ring thing.
I still need to watch the ring thing. I haven't watched the ring thing yet.
The Rings of Power.
Some of our viewers may not know what you guys are talking about right now, including this guy right here. Sorry.
You can't cite. Do you remember how many rings were created in the Lord of the Rings? Do you happen to know? You're not that much.
I remember the One Ring.
There is the
Frodo
One Ring
was like
to
in charge
rule
of
them
it.
all. That Sauron
Is it
creates.
21?
There was
Darn.
That was a hard no right there.
3
Tim.
rings for the Elven Kings.
How'd that feel?
Got that?
I felt that in my
7
chest.
rings for the Dwarf Lords.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I mixed it up.
And then 9. The 9. 9 rings for the race of men. So 9 plus 7 plus 3 is how many?
19.
Plus the 1 ring. So you were
So
close.
20. Yeah,
You were close.
what I
20
did
rings
is I
totally.
misremembered the 7 as 8. That's where I got 21.
There you go. So yeah, okay, there you go. So you were close. Anyway, moving on.
All these numbers are reminding me of the symbolic numbers of Revelation.
What maybe Tolkien was very much influenced by Revelation. So, okay, so let's move on to our next segment, which is our Great Book War. And Pastor Dave told me it is my turn this week. You recommended one last week. Was that true? I forget what you recommended.
I did.
Okay, what was it? Remind me what it was last week. Do you remember? I'm putting you on the spot. You don't even you don't remember what you recommended last week. But he's got a book hidden over there, which I would recommend as well, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to recommend today this book. It is called From Pentecost to Patmos by Craig Blomberg, who was one of my New Testament professors at Denver Seminary. And I'm recommending this book because Craig, along with Daryl Bach, is going to be on an underground podcast we are filming later today. That will be released when, Tim? Friday?
That will be out. Yikes. That will be out, I believe, yes, this Friday at 5 p.m.
So Friday at 5 p.m., you will see our conversation we're having today with Craig and Daryl on some end times issues. And if you buy this book, you can read Craig's surveyed thoughts on the book of Revelation. So this is a book called From Pentecost to Patmos. It is an introduction to Acts through Revelation, and it's very accessible. If you want to get a survey of everything after Jesus and the Gospels, this is a wonderful resource for you. I highly recommend it. There's a second edition out. I'm not sure what they updated, but but this one was good. So check that out. Pentecost to Patmos. That will very much aid in your study of the New Testament.
Just a reminder, last week I recommended Brent and Sandy's book, From Plowshares to Pruning
there
Hooks.
you go. That's right. Plowshares and pruning
Lots
hooks.
of P's here.
Pentecost to Patmos, Plowshares to Pruning Hooks.
Yeah.
So we'll have to
Sorry
pick a
for
book next
forgetting
week
that.
that's not a
It was a
that's
great
not
book.
P book.
Come back next week
Don't
for
let my forgetfulness-
periwinkles to prudence. I don't know.
There you go. All right, I'm going to let you redeem yourself, Pastor Dave, because our next segment is the chart sighting segment. Was there a chart sighting this week?
There was a chart sighting this week.
And you will never know
So
how
after
excited
service-
Pastor Dave gets excited about charts. He will
After
just
service,
lit up.
Tim had notified me on my device about an amazing chart that's found, I believe, in the ESV
See how
Study
excited he
Bible.
got right there?
ESV Study
Started
Bible,
shouting.
wide margin edition, where this particular section, which I do have a copy of the ESV Study Bible, but I hadn't looked at it recently, evidently breaks down the 7 churches. So, Tim, can you show us the beauty of what you got there, man? So check that out. What you'll notice in the chart is there are 7 rows because there's 7 churches, and then it shows you the structure of each of the letters because there's similarities. And once you know the similarities, then you can notice, oh, here's how each one is a little different. And then the differences help you unpack and unlock the meaning of that particular letter. So until you really do the chart work, you don't understand. You got to sit down with some boxes. You got to sit down with a pencil. You got to sit down and be like, this goes here. Here's the x-axis, y-axis. And then you're like, bam, that's what it means. But the chart helps you get there, right? So appreciate that, Tim.
So this is actually my wife's
Order.
Bible, and if you're into charts, this may be the
Well,
Bible
if
for you.
you're into charts,
Because look at this.
do you know who you're talking to?
Look at this. It's got a table of contents for charts and diagrams in the Bible.
Wow.
Man,
That's a lot of charts.
Wow.
that's a beauty
What
right
is
there.
your favorite chart and diagram in that Bible, Tim? Have you
I don't know. So
exhausted
far, it's the
those?
Revelation one. I have to take a deep dive. I don't know. You know, they say don't covet your neighbor. And is it wrong to covet your wife's Bible? Is that because might be a little jealous at this
Well,
point?
you
That
can,
seems
of
like
course,
a
the
good
ESV
theology
Study
sprint
Bible's
one day.
been out for quite some time, so you can, of course, go purchase your own ESV.
I could. I have the
Study
ESV Gospel Transformation Bible.
That's also good. Although your wife's Bible may be, a little thicker, have a little bit more resources in it than that
Yeah,
one.
it does.
So
It does.
she may be one-upping you. Although the font on her Bible seemed really small, man. Her eyesight must be fine. It's a problem for me lately. I've been doing like plus on my screens and stuff. Like,
Wow.
what's the matter with me? My ophthalmologist actually had to increase the magnification on the progressive part of the lens recently. I don't know, man. I read a lot. Like,
Man,
I
this
have
is,
to I have to like pray.
Are you having a crisis
This is what
right
I have
here
to,
on the show?
This is what I have to look forward to, huh?
It's concerning to me. I don't know. He said like there's like beginnings of cataracts on the one eye. I'm like, what the? I need my eyes, man. I gotta see. So I take that for granted, and my font has to be bigger sometimes, man. That's the deal. Cool chart. Thank you.
All right. Well, there we go.
All right.
You had a chart though
That's
in the
the
sermon.
standard transition.
You had a hold on. You're trying to
All right.
escape the chart sightings.
Oh,
You had a
I thought we were
in
done.
the sermon that was because this can lead into the sermon here. That was rather clever that you said you spent hours on coming up with. Can you tell us about that chart?
Oh, you would consider that to be a chart? Okay, I'll take
I
it.
consider it was in a box. You were
I'll
talking about
take it.
boxes.
I'll take it. Hey, listen. Well, there was a box, and there were some words in one box. That's that is the smallest version of a chart
that
possible.
was,
I think.
Dave was unimpressed with his own chart.
So I don't know about you, but I cannot ever remember the order.
I got a C+ on my chart last week. I was trying to give him a prop here.
That was a little harsh. I'm sorry about that. I'm working on my gentleness. So I have struggles like remembering the order of the 7 churches, and I remember Ephesus is first, and I remember Laodicea is last, but the middle gets a little fuzzy in my mind. So it's Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and then Laodicea. So I came up with a mnemonic device that will help us remember the order, and it's also sort of the main theme of the book of at least of the 7 letters part of the book. So every saint prevails through sacrifice, perseverance, and
Give
listening.
this to Tim so he can add it in after the fact.
I got plans.
I was
Every
very
saint
impressed
prevails.
with what you did here, and
You were.
yeah, I was. I think maybe I came up. I suggested the idea, and you did well. Or
I'm not
did
sure
Ray
you
do it?
suggested this, man. This was my
Oh, you know what?
idea.
I suggested you use
Take
it more.
credit.
I suggested you use it more often. That's what I did.
Yes, you
And
did.
You
Yes,
did.
you did.
You kept using it.
Tim, I actually had a typo on my slide. Perseverance was spelled
No.
wrong. So I'm going to send you my news slides with perseverance spelled right. But hey, make sure you memorize that. That's your homework for this week. Memorize that mnemonic device.
There you go. All right. Was there any other charts, or can we move on to the sermon discussion?
All right.
All right.
All right. All right. We're done with that.
Whenever I edit these, I know. So after I edit,
Timestamp.
after
All right.
whenever I go to edit these, fun fact for a little behind the scenes, after it's done, I have to go make the chapters for Spotify and for YouTube, and you always know when the next segment's coming up because Bob says, "All right."
All right.
So
We're done with that. Let's move on. Moving on. How about we do that?
We're going to switch over to thus ends the section on.
Thus ends the segment. All right. So
And then we're going to start each new segment with, and so it begins.
make it so. All right. Can we talk about your sermon now? Are we?
All right.
these 8
All right.
a.m.s
So,
are where it's at.
Pastor Dave, continuing in our study in Revelation. We are now in Revelation 2 and 3, and we did do a time jump a couple weeks ago because Noah stepped in when I was sick. He did Ephesus,
Time jump.
and then we went back.
That was awesome. How did we do that?
It just happened.
1.21
Boom. There we
gigawatts.
go, and then we came back.
88 miles
per hour.
We rewinded, we fast forwarded.
Okay,
Chronologically,
so,
we're
by
all
the
over
way,
the
so
place.
now you got me on a tangent. So by the way, can we just talk about the fact that was took place in 85, and somehow
think it
he
was
created a
85, yeah.
car that could run on garbage. That was how that thing was powered. He put garbage in it.
That's right.
It was like banana peels.
Speaking of banana peels, those could be in major shortage. So just remember, for you Back to the
We're
Future,
off the rails, folks.
You may know about the rings, but do you know about the garbage DeLorean? That was the 2015 version that he invented when he went to the future.
Oh, there you go.
Originally, it was
That's
run by plutonium, which is why
That's right. That's why the Iranians
remember
were after him.
It was
right.
the Libyans.
Sorry, I haven't seen it in a while.
It was the Libyans, and so they were like looking for their plutonium that Doc had stolen, and then somehow when he went to the future, like he figured out how to run
but
it
still,
on garbage.
2015 now was almost 10 years ago. Why are we not having cars run on garbage?
It is 9
arguing
years
about
ago.
electric versus gas.
I was expecting those hoverboards and a lot of other features in Back to the Future 2 that have not yet come about, and so I'm disappointed.
According to
with
the
where we are.
Jetsons, we should have flying cars by now.
We should. And what's going on? We're behind. I don't know.
Michael J. Fox lied to me.
Yeah. Now, this blew my mind. So in the first Back to the Future, he went back from 85 to 55, right? And he
Right.
met his parents and stuff like that 30 years back.
Yep.
So today, if we were to go back 30 years, that's 1994. That doesn't seem right to me. That doesn't seem that long ago. Maybe Tim
It
thinks
wasn't
it's
that
a long
long ago.
time ago, but
Man.
I don't think it was that long
I wasn't
ago.
around.
Put that in perspective right there.
Whoa.
When did you come on the scene, Tim?
1999.
Gotcha.
Wow. I was preparing for Y2K that year.
Yeah.
All right.
Boy,
so your
are we
sermon,
off track. I don't know how we got where we were.
I actually now I really don't remember how we got
60-second sermon flyover.
Hey,
Thanks, Tim.
seven
Thank you.
churches of the book of Revelation. The number 7 is symbolic in Revelation. So the reason why he chooses 7 churches is because he's talking to his complete church. He's talking to his entire church. These letters are universal.
Mm-hmm.
They are applicable to all of us. I love what Tim Chester said. Your church is in the CC line. So there's parts of these letters that can apply to every church, every generation. There was more than 7 churches in the first century. There was more than 7 churches in Asia Minor. Colossae was there. There's no letter to the church at Colossae in the
left
book of
out.
Revelation. There was other churches. Anyway, so he writes to 7 churches, and each of the letters teaches you something different about a struggle that the church can face. And so for Ephesus, the struggle was they were holding on to solid doctrine, but yet he says they left their first love. So each letter contains a commendation, something that they're doing well, and then each letter contains a rebuke, something that they need to work on and that they're not doing well. And then each letter contains some sort of exhortation, and then each letter ends with some kind of reward that's usually found elsewhere in the book of Revelation, like the tree of life, or you're going to experience this blessing that we learn about and we interpret from other places in the book of Revelation. And then every single letter ends with the same phrase, he who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. 7 letters, 7 churches, wonderful material to challenge all of us in every age about what Jesus has to say to the church. What do you think, man? If Jesus were to write us a letter, if Jesus were to write Millington Baptist Church, well, let's maybe broaden it. If Jesus were to write a letter to the church in America today, what would he say to the church in America?
Stop putting garbage in your cars and trying to power it that way.
Okay.
So I was trying to make a tie-in. Yeah, I think...
So I'll let you think about that. I got a quick answer. So N.T. Wright was doing an interview one time, and he was talking about if there was a letter written to the American church today, what would it say? And his answer was actually quite convicting and challenging to me. He said something to the effect of, the American church doesn't love each other, and they don't care either about that. So I thought about that answer for many, many days after I heard of it, and I thought, wow, that's really true. There's been a splintering, there's been factions, there's been polarization, there's been demonization, and I don't think if we received a letter today, that part would be left out. I think that's something that we struggle with, and that the American church needs to be rebuked about, starting with me, but I think expanding to many of us. What do you think, man? What other struggles is the American church?
Well, I was two things I was thinking. There's actually been a number of books that have been written recently from different perspectives, emphasizing different things on writing to the American church. So I know Francis Chan wrote a book on letters to the churches.
That's right.
I forget if he titled it that, but it was basically the idea.
Yeah, he did something
Eric
like that.
Metaxas wrote one that was more like Bonhoeffer focused. There's been a few books that have written there. So that's one thing. So I think it's an interesting theme that people have picked up on. The other thing is that when I was in seminary, my church history professor, I remember a number of things, but one of the themes that he would bring up was that the church often looks like the culture that it's a part of. If you look back over church history, there's cultural trends, there's pressures that inevitably influence the church. And so I think your N.T. Wright comment is an indication of that the church in a lot of ways is looking like our current cultural moment. I was just listening today, people were overviewing the current polling for the president, and basically they were saying there's a certain segment of the country that no matter what will vote one way, and there's another segment of the country that no matter what will vote another way, and we are literally 50-50. And everybody feels strongly on both sides. And at some level, I think that is impacting the church. Now, what do you do with that? That's maybe another discussion, but I think N.T. Wright's exhortation is something worthy of consideration.
Yeah.
So that's my current thought on it.
So tee this up, Bob. In chapter 1, you had done some exposition on the majestic vision of Jesus Christ, and it says that he's walking amongst the 7 golden lampstands, and that there's 7 stars, and the 7 stars are the 7 angels of the churches. It specifically says that.
Yeah.
And then as we get to chapters 2 and 3, each of the letters begins with, to the angel of the church at Ephesus, to the angel of the church at Smyrna. What are we talking about here? What is the identity of the angel? Tee that up for us.
I love that you threw it over to me to tee it up, since I had brought it up before. But yes, it is introduced in chapter 1. It's repeated in chapters 2 and 3. So there's at least 2 views on this that people debate. Some people think that the 7 stars, these angels, are actually supernatural angels that are guarding these churches, and I think by extension the church at large. Other people will say that these angels are referring to the pastors of those churches, because angel, the angelos, can also mean messenger. So those are at least the two views that I'm aware of that people debate back and forth, and I can see merit for both. But as you were reading yesterday, it was making me wonder: is it referring more to the leaders of those churches that are guarding the doctrine and everything, the way that the words are phrased in chapter 2 and 3? Although I guess I can see some merit in the other one too. But I don't know. Did you give any thought to that as you were going through? Was that something you came up in your study?
I'm familiar with the debate. I don't know that I've come to a firm conclusion here. I did remember that John the Baptist was called an angelos in Matthew chapter 11. So there's one example of at least a human being referred to as an angel or a messenger, because that's really all the word angelos means.
Right.
And of course, in Mark chapter 1, there's the messenger passage in Malachi being quoted that may be referring to either John the Baptist or Jesus. So some people say they're human beings, pastors, leaders, elders, bishops, if you're more of the high church mentality. We certainly, as pastors, do function as a messenger for God.
Well, let's just go with that. In other words, you're an angel. Pastor Dave is an angel right here.
This feels, I don't know, uncomfortable. But I think, we don't have anything to say in and of ourselves. We are just simply the delivery mechanism. We're to be faithful to God's word and to deliver that to the congregation. So we're to be God's messenger. Now, if the angels are heavenly beings, perhaps some people say what that means is each church might have a guardian angel or some kind of heavenly being associated with each congregation. So maybe there's an angel of Millington Baptist Church. I don't know about that interpretation. That strikes me as having some difficulties there. The biggest thing for me is like John is writing the letter to them, and he's saying this is addressed to the angel of the church at. And so I'm not sure why we need letters in the New Testament that are written to heavenly beings. That seems a little unusual to me. These letters were to be read by human beings in congregations, in churches, and I'm not sure why they would need to be read by celestial beings. So for me, that view seems a little unusual. So I think probably I lean more towards this is talking about, the leaders of those churches during the time where he, the leader, was exiled to Patmos. So he was delegating the authority over to these other leaders while he was sent away because of his condition, because of his imprisonment.
Can I read this paragraph from Blomberg's book? So here now
we got the expert. Let's bring in an expert on this.
Very brief here, not going super in depth, but here's what he says. He says the 7 stars that stand for the angels of the 7 churches have perennially puzzled commentators. So it's not an easy thing to interpret. The word angelos means messenger. So some have imagined letter carriers or pastors. But elsewhere in the New Testament, the expression always refers to supernatural beings. So most believe John is alluding to the Jewish idea, probably behind 1 Corinthians 11:10, which he discussed earlier in the book, of angels watching over the churches at worship. So that's how he tees it up. In any event, it is clear that the messengers he is about to write are for the actual churches in Asia Minor. So that's his short conclusion there.
There you go. Thank you for bringing in the good doctor. We'll look forward to seeing him later today. Yeah. So another
thing
we
can ask him about this.
Yeah. Another thing I just wanted to bring up is that there are other views of Revelation. There's not just the futurist view. There's not just the preterist view. There's something called the historicist view. We're not going to talk a whole lot about that view. It's a view that's held by many Seventh-day Adventists, and there's some other people who take that view. Although, even if you're not a historicist, some people take these 7 letters as representative of the 7 different ages of church history. I remember years ago, I was listening to the great J. Vernon McGee, who did a Through the Bible radio program. He's now passed away, although his radio program is still being aired around the world. I think more people have listened to him since he's been passed away than when he was alive, which is a good goal for you, Pastor Bob. So let's get the word out with Behind the Pulpit. So this thing will keep going on and on past Pastor Bob's passing to glory.
This will be in the ether later on.
Anyway, Vernon McGee was talking about this. other historicists have said this. So I'm just going to outline this. This may not be interesting to you, but some people see it this way, okay? So the first letter, the church at Ephesus, would represent the apostolic age. That's the age of the apostles, and that goes from like 33 AD to like 300. Okay, the second church, Smyrna, represents the persecution of the church that started so the apostolic age ends around 100, and then the Smyrnian era starts from like 100 to 300, and that's the age of persecution.
Try saying that 5 times fast. Smyrnian era.
Smyrnian. Yeah, it sounds like, what's Gollum's name? Smeagol or something. Okay, so.
Smeagol.
Yeah. So, yes, the church of Smyrna obviously was experiencing persecution. There was heavy persecution in the first 200 years. So that's kind of the 100 to 300 era. Then Pergamum would be the compromising church. So this is the church that was like from 300 to about 500. Then there's Thyatira. That's the rise of the papacy. And that goes from about 500 all the way to the Reformation. So they would see that as an age where the church experienced a lot of compromise. Then there's the age of Philadelphia. I'm sorry, Sardis. Sardis. Man, I need to get a chart on the screen so I get this straight. Tim, I'll send you a chart so that people can follow along with what I'm saying later.
See how he gets confused without the charts.
Yeah. So Sardis would be the age of Reformation. So this is when the reformers came, and that goes all the way up to sort of the age of Philadelphia, which is the age of evangelism, the missionary movement, the 1800s, that kind of thing. Today, guess where we are?
Laodicea.
We are. We're getting spit out of the mouth of Jesus. So this is the present day, the
lukewarm church.
The drifted church, man.
There you go.
That's why we need a conference.
Part of what we talk about. That can be another theme of the conference.
Right.
The Laodiceans.
So I just wanted to mention that historicists see the 7 churches as 7 different time periods in church history. And, there's some interesting parts to that view. I'll just say that. It's interesting to think about. I personally don't hold that view, but it's worthy of a discussion on a show like this. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, I thought you did a good job of highlighting all the different takeaways from those churches, and in reality, there's parts of each of those that I think can apply to our lives and the life of the church today. So that was really good. I thought you did a good overview. What else? Was there anything that surprised you about the passage that you having to do one? I remember when I did it is difficult to cover so many different points. I remember I did one sermon on the Sermon on the Mount one time, which was rather challenging, and I imagine it was similar to something like this.
There's so much that we had to leave out, and I would really encourage you to check out those YouTube sermons this week and dive deeper into each of those letters. That's why we made those available for you. There's also a PDF of the workbook available on our website. So, hey, journey with us this week as we walk through the 7 churches of the book of Revelation. It was a good series. It's worthy of reconsideration. But we are going to move on, just to be clear, we are going to move on to Revelation chapter 4 next Sunday. So,
are you sure?
I'm sure.
You're going to...
Unless there's some sort of act of God or some sort of sickness or something.
You're not coming in with a sermon on Sardis next week.
I'm not. So it's...
You're not bringing the weights back.
No. That is all we're doing in this series. And so, interestingly, I was thinking about this last night. So remember the theme yesterday was like hearing. And, the Christian life is all about listening. How good of a listener are you? Which is the challenge, I think, for today. How are we listening to the voice of God? How are you listening to the voice of God? But then next week's passage in Revelation chapter 4 is not about hearing. It's about seeing. And John gets lifted up to heaven to see a divine perspective on what's going on in a transcendent other realm. So we move from the ears to the eyes as we start What's an Amazing Vision next Sunday. So I don't know if John had that in mind, but I was thinking we're moving from ears to eyes next Sunday. So that's where we're headed next time.
Okay, very cool. We're looking forward to that. Dave was already talking about concentric circle charts for next week, so stay tuned for the next chart.
Wait, we want them to come.
That's happening.
Don't scare them away.
All right, Tim. Let's move on to the Theology Sprint. Do you have a question for us today?
I do. So Noah is not here, unfortunately, and
I just got an email from Noah.
Well, he's here somewhere then. I tried to hand him off this responsibility, and
It was already too weighty for the guy. He's just, it's a lot of pressure coming up with these big questions, Tim.
yes. So I have one, and I'm interested to hear your take on it because I think it is. Bob mentioned something about the political divide already, and I think this is very prevalent in our nation. So yesterday I was at a little music festival. The band who played my wedding was playing. And this woman came up to me and tried to give me these little Jesus figurines and a prayer card, and she's like, Jesus, vote red for Jesus or whatever. And I'm like, huh. So I would wonder what you would say to people who think you can't be a Christian unless you vote for one political party, and that sort of realm. I feel like that's something that, a lot of Christians may be, associated with one typical political party. Others may not be in that party. So I feel like there's a lot of misconstruity, if that's a real word, of you need to be voting for something if you're a Christian. So if you could speak a little bit on that.
Mm-hmm.
Was Jesus a Democrat or Republican?
Do you want me to try to give it a...
Well, we moved from hard questions to really hard questions this week,
Yeah.
Pastor Bob. You want to give it a crack?
I can give it a crack. Well, I mean, Jesus, of course, was neither a Republican or Democrat because that was not a category back in his day. And Jesus, the cool thing about going through Revelation is that we are reminded that Jesus will come back and he will establish his kingdom and he will perfectly rule. Until that time, we have imperfect governments, we have imperfect political parties. I would say I think the important thing for Christians to wrestle through our issues, and I do think there are important issues that Christians should think very, very deeply about. And different Christians weight things differently as far as what they're doing. I think the main thing is as you are searching through the Scriptures, that you are wrestling with the Scriptures, you're wrestling with complex issues, and you're trying to choose a cast your vote in a way that is in alignment with that as you wrestle through the Scriptures in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question. As a church, we don't endorse political candidates.
Yeah.
As an individual, as I look at the two platforms, I see some concerns with one of the platforms. I greatly value life. I greatly value the family. I do think that these are biblical values that we want to really celebrate in our society, and so I struggle in that area. At the same time, there are other issues to consider. So it's not just about life. It's not just about the family. There's other issues. There's judicial appointments. That's a big issue. There's governmental mandates. There's drug policy. There's Social Security. There's social media regulation. There's net neutrality. There's minimum wage issues, government spending issues, corporate tax stuff, capital gains tax, unions, tariffs, border wall, border security, immigration policy, campaign finance reform, lobbying. There's all kinds of issues. So Christians wrestle with this by saying, okay, what are the most important issues for me? Now, some Christians are just, they're a one-issue voter, and that's the most important issue for me. So let's say if we were just talking about abortion, okay? So as Christians, as conservative Christians, we value life. And we believe that a child in the womb is a life that's created by God and worthy of protection. So if abortion was the only issue on the ticket, there would be no such thing as a Christian who didn't vote for the candidate that was most pro-life. We would just be all decided on the same thing. Mm-hmm. The issue is that's not the only issue on the ticket, and so we have to consider other issues too. And you kind of think, what are the most important issues to me, and what are those issues on the ballot this year that will have a practical impact by voting for the party with this part of their platform too? And so sometimes we may care passionately about an issue, but it's not really going to be coming up as a big part of our society's transformation at this time. So it's a thoughtful process. I think Christians need to definitely vote your values. Christians do need to vote. A lot of Christians are not even voting or not even registered to vote.
Yeah,
and I think that's an issue.
Yes,
I think it's like half.
Important that you vote.
I think it's like the statistics are like half. Like half of Christians don't even participate, don't even vote.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem. So we encourage you to
might be
register to
disillusioned
vote
by the process, or I can't vote for one or two candidates. We did put together a paper with our elders, and there was a lot of resources that could help you think through some of those things that we could recommend in the show notes.
Right.
This is a hard question to answer in 60 seconds, Tim.
Yeah.
That's okay. Because if you guys want more, we did a really cool Underground Sessions podcast episode
There you go.
on a similar subject.
We spent at least 30 or 40 minutes talking about this and how to sort of have a guide to think about the church and the state and what's our role.
Yep.
I do think, and I'll say two things. Okay. The first one is that as Christians, we need to recognize that there's a lot of chaos out there, and the talking heads can sort of stir up some anxiety and fear in us. And I'm not saying that those issues aren't important. They are important, and you should vote your values, and we should definitely participate. But the Lord is up to something, too, in this country, and he's still going to be on the throne on the day after the election, although half of the country will be disappointed. And I think we need to remember that. There is a move of God right now happening, I think, even in our country. We see like these mass baptisms on, secular university campuses. I read a statistic yesterday. Somebody sent us an article about particular Gen Z demographics and how the young men in Gen Z are actually having an increase in their church participation and church attendance. That's exciting. In a day and age where typically it was the men who were lagging behind a little bit in the demographic of church attendance. So Tim, Band of Brothers, man, there's a need for that ministry. The young men are starting to see allegiance to Christ as really important. And so there's some really exciting things happening in our country. The second thing is, so yesterday there was this gigantic event in D.C. in the Washington Mall. And there was a lot of speakers there. RFK Jr. was there. There was a lot of people talking about, saving our country. So two people were on the stage, Dr. Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand. And I sent you this last night.
Oh, I didn't get to watch it. Okay,
It was astonishing. It was astonishing. So in a day and age where sometimes pastors are having these, moral failures, I'm watching Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand on a stage in Washington, D.C., on their knees, leading the entire crowd in the Lord's Prayer. Wow. This is like it was like almost like a secular rock concert kind of environment. Wow. And Russell Brand's like, if it's okay with you, I'd like to close our time with the Lord's Prayer. You pray in whatever version that you're most familiar with, and then he leads the entire. So I do think the Lord is up to something.
Yeah.
And if you look out on the horizon past Fox News and MSNBC, you can see this sort of revival cloud that I think is out there. And I hear the thunder, man. I hear the peals of thunder.
Peals of thunder coming.
And I think the Lord is on the move. So no matter what happens, Revelation reminds us that there is this throne. And unfortunately, Trump or Harris are not on that throne.
Right.
There's someone on the throne who's in complete sovereign control. So we can rest and we can be okay.
And if you do want to see changes within the country, changes even within governmental structures and all that, I think it's the most important thing would be to see people come to know Christ and have their minds and their souls formed by a biblical worldview, and then policies will follow. We always like to say that politics is downstream of culture, and culture is downstream of philosophy or religion. So if there is a change in the religious mindset, if there's a religious awakening coming to Christ, then culture will change, and then ultimately politics and policies will change. So that's the most important thing that we should focus on.
One more quick little thing. I know we need to wrap up, but in terms of religious liberty, that's very much an issue, I think, on the minds of a lot of Christians. And I think last week you had released a podcast that had to do with religious liberty and the right of crisis pregnancy centers to continue in their good work. So did you want to just highlight that in case people missed that? I think that dropped, Friday
Tim
night?
might have another
Friday night?
JPEG for
did
that.
It drop?
It dropped on Friday night. So so we're following along First Choice Women's Resource Center and Amy Huber. The state is coming, I think I can say is coming after them, desiring to infringe upon their First Amendment free speech rights, which, by the way, I would say First Amendment and free speech is a major issue. in this election if you're looking out over where things could potentially go. And also, of course, the issue of abortion is a big thing. But yeah, so Amy is the state of New Jersey is trying to get them to turn over information, which they don't think is constitutionally warranted. So this episode very much covers some of those issues in depth. We get an update. We did an episode last year that kind of laid out what the issues are. We reviewed that a little bit, and we also talked about what's currently going on. They also had a lawyer from the Alliance of Defending Freedom who was there. And if you want to know about some of the key issues, you can go to adflegal.org. Alliance Defending Freedom is doing a lot of really, really good work that has major implications for, I think, the country and your family and education and things like that. So those are all issues to be very much aware of and prayerfully consider as you cast your vote.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to end with one announcement and taking us back to the Revelation issue. We are going to be having our Underground Session event this coming Sunday night, 5:30 to 7:30, and I will remind you, register. Can everybody out there say register?
Register.
Thank you. Particularly, let us know if you would like to come for dinner at 5 o'clock. I mentioned we are going to be having Turkish food in honor of the 7 churches of Revelation. That's going to be a delicious meal as we prepare to have a rather lively panel discussion. Basically, what we're doing is we're going to have the 4 different millennial views represented. Mill, post-mill, dispensational premill, and historic premill, and we're going to be talking about all the issues as it relates to that. We have different representatives for each. This is a little weird for me because I'm actually going to be a panelist. Dave's going to moderate, so we're going to be kind of in the throne room.
That's different.
For this Underground Session.
That was a lot of pressure. No, the throne room's in the morning, so that's the Sunday sermon. Revelation 4 and 5 next week. The evening is not the throne room.
Anyway,
the evening is the courtroom, man. That's the debate. That's where we're going to have it out.
So
Duke
we're going
it
to
out.
have very, as always at the Underground, trying to model disagreement well, but also raising the important issues and helping people think through why different people come to different conclusions on these things. We'll also talk about what are some of the adjacent issues that are on the menu of your questions.
Hey, how are we supposed to think about the rapture? Is it pre-trib? Is it post-trib? How are we supposed to think about the nation of Israel? Is there a future for the ethnic Jews, or is that something that's already been fulfilled and the church is now the new Israel? How are we supposed to think about the number 1,000? Is that symbolic, or is that a literal 1,000 years? Mm-hmm. How are we supposed to think about how to read the whole Bible and put the whole Bible together? Is it a covenantal framework or a dispensational framework? And how does this affect your life? What does your view of the end actually mean in terms of you living out your discipleship and following Christ today? So does it have an effect? We believe it does. Check it out. Study with us next Sunday night, 5 o'clock for dinner, 5:30.
There it is. And what's the key word? Register.
Hey, let me just close with these 7 words. Remember this, guys. Don't forget it. Every saint prevails through sacrifice, perseverance, and listening. That's our theme for this week. We hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks for watching.